McCann, Committee Chair. Call this July 15th PSTA Planning Committee meeting to order. I'm the Committee Chair, Max McCann, representing St. Petersburg. Let's go around the room and introduce ourselves, starting with Mr. Miller.
Good morning. My name is Brad Miller. I'm the CEO of PSTA.
Good morning, Deborah Figg Sanders, Chair of PSTA and St. Petersburg City Council.
Richie Floyd, I'm on St. Petersburg City Council.
Barbara Hazelden, citizen appointee from the Pinellas County Commission.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Now's the time for public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on any agenda or non-agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move into our action items. First action item is 3A, to approve the June 17th meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next action item is 3B, the trim notice and service adjustment hearing. Ms. Leas previously presented this to the Finance Committee, and now she'll go over it with us at the Planning Committee. We're going to cover recommended proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2027 for the trim notice, as well as a service adjustment hearing. Debbie?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As the chair just said, we presented this to the Finance Committee and we had a unanimous approval to move forward with the action items that I'll be presenting here at the Planning Committee. So we have presented to you in June a balanced budget with a small surplus, and that included headcount reductions, cost-saving measures, including those that the board came up with ideas for us to implement, as well as the use of one-time funds. However, I think there's other opportunities for some cost savings as we take a look at our two lowest performing routes. The one is the microtransit service in Safety Harbor, and it's called the Snapper in Safety Harbor, and the other is for Route 90 in St. Pete Beach. So the main reason we're here today is for approving, and staff has a recommendation for the maximum millage to be transmitted to the property appraiser. This is the maximum amount that we cannot go over once it's submitted. However, we do have opportunities to lower it during the course of the summer. So in the budget that we presented to you, we were at 0.7300. Staff is recommending a reduction to 0.7250, which is the third year in the row we'd be lowering the millage as well as the lowest rate in the last 16 years. And I would say, that is the third year. So one of the things getting here is our greatest risk has been fuel. So I'm very grateful for a mixed fleet of vehicles with electric, hybrid electric, and diesel, because the diesel prices have been so high. But I'm very pleased to say that since we met in June, I've been able to lock in diesel prices at an average of about $2.92 a gallon for 50% of the fuel that we use here at PSTA. The other half of it is still up at $3.50, and on any given day that may not be enough or it may be too much. So I'm really hoping that it will continue to drop. Right now it's back up again, and that maybe we can lock in even more. We're taking a look at other ideas as the routes that we're going to be talking about, as well as we've been spending a lot of time going through the budget, finding any savings humanly possible or any revenues as well. So when I look at this and I say, okay, we're able to roll back a little bit to the 0.7250, what does a full rollback look like? That would be the 0.7168, which is only 1.14%. What we're recommending is only 1.14% over the full rolled back rate. And again, the way we have it in the budget right now at the 0.7250, we don't have any service cuts. So everything remains the same as it is. It allows a little bit of cushion for the diesel fuel, not knowing where that's going. That's our most volatile number in the budget. So one of the things, I tend to be a saver, so there's a piece of me that likes to save. The other piece says, and I was calling this the Commissioner Peter principle, because she has talked to us about how when you roll back the rates, you have the ability in times of need to roll forward, to be able to help out at that point in time. And, I think that point is coming soon in November for key decisions. So the decisions by the voters, we need 60% on Amendment 3 to pass. And should it pass, we're going to have significant cuts not only to service, but to staff. So that'll really be impacting the community. And as I always was telling this to the Finance Committee, growing up, my 2 words to my children were actions and consequences. You have a choice. Those consequences could be very positive or they could not. Clearly, the passage of Amendment 3 will give us some very draconian cuts that will be coming forth. At the August meeting, we will be discussing the what-ifs this passes. And I think that'll be very educational to the public, and that's what we need to do, is educate the public. But today, our action items are twofold. One is the maximum millage to be transmitted to the property appraiser of .7250. The other is to hold a public hearing on the 2 routes I mentioned, the Route 90 goes to St. Pete Beach, and the Snapper service in Safety Harbor. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Chair Fix Sanders?
Thank you. Going back to slide 4, the route changes on the lower 2 performances. I know we're voting on being able to have the public hearing for those. What is going to be the strategy in informing? I know there are low routes, but there are actually riders on those routes. What is the actual plan other than a public hearing to inform them that those routes are going away? Because what I envision is those riders coming to a board
I would
meeting
imagine
and
so.
having those conversations. And so I kind of want to know what we're going to do proactively to inform those riders other than the public hearing.
And the public hearing is noticed not only at all of our stops, but we can also put, and I don't want to speak for Amanda, but put items in
I
our
can
buses.
speak to how we typically advertise our public hearings. Amanda Baird, Director of Communications and Marketing. We always post our public hearings in Tampa Bay Times, on our website, on our social media channels, as well as on board all of our buses. So in addition, for this one, for Snapper, we are going to post some messaging on those vehicles as well, just to make sure that those riders are getting that information.
Okay, because I'm going to be the first to tell you, I don't read Tampa Bay Times. I don't go to the website if I don't have access to it. A lot of riders don't do a lot of social media. So I think I was just wondering if there was gonna be, and you just answered it when you said that on those particular routes, there will be advertisements
It'll
every
be
time
on
they get on, okay?
The entire fleet, so not just those routes. So if a
Oh,
rider
okay.
occasionally rides the
Okay.
90 but happens to be riding the 4 that day, they'll see that
They'll
message.
see it, okay, thank you for that, all right, thank you, Chair.
Any other questions or comments? In that case, I have a question. We talked about the Route 90 serving employees along its route who are getting to and from work. Is there the potential for the employers? I know municipalities contribute in order to cover services. Is there the potential for an employer to contribute to cover the costs of that route and maybe keep it going? Have we ever done that before?
We have not been successful at getting, we've been successful at getting employers, including many of the employers of the people that ride that route, to do a UPass contract, to pay the fare, the passenger fare for their employees to ride. But as far as an annual subsidy of $300,000, that's a little heavier lift for to subsidize the route. I mean, that was suggested at our budget workshop. I at the table, you know, that route is especially related because it is workers working at the beach. And we, you know, the ridership has really gone down on that route since we launched the Sunrunner because at least there's even more, it's much more frequent and all day to take the Sunrunner over there to the beach than to go down around the Skyway or past Eckerd College and then to the Don Cesar and up, which this route does. The Bayway. But yeah, I mean, as in terms of the two routes, the Route 90 does have substantially more riders than the Safety Harbor Snapper does. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we get a lot of public comment, and that's the purpose of the public hearing is to hear the comments. Maybe there is some reason that they're not taking this Sunrunner, and that they want to take that route. I'm not really sure.
I personally would be very curious about the potential to remove Route 90 and then use those resources to go to 10-minute service on the Sunrunner, especially if we're expecting some of the traffic to come from Route 90 to the Sunrunner. I think that would be possibly a powerful move. So that being said, any other questions or comments on this action item?
Move approval on, what is it 2 recommendations?
Oops, sorry, I went back there.
Yeah, 2 recommendations.
Okay, move
Second.
approval on both.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Floyd, what's the second? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Item 3C is our interlocal agreements resolution. Mr. Miller, our CEO, will review a proposed resolution to allow the CEO to accept funding from municipalities provided through interlocal agreements. Brad, take it
Thank
away.
you. Good morning. Actually, I am hopeful to be efficient and tackle with this item. Maybe you can consider approving the next 2 items on your agenda in addition, because they're all related. This item is a recommendation for a new resolution that the PSA board would adopt. The next 2 items on your agenda are recommended approvals of interlocal agreement revenues to receive from municipalities. The first one is to receive the $220,000 from St. Pete Beach for the trolley services that run in St. Pete Beach, and they pay us for fiscal year 26. Their council approved that, and that's the action today would be to receive those funds that they're sending us. The second one is a revenue received from St. Petersburg. St. Pete City Council voted to approve $75,000 in additional funds about a month ago to send to PSTA for the Transportation Disadvantaged Bus Pass program that the city of St. Petersburg pays the co-pays, the bus pass cost for the residents of St. Petersburg that qualify for that. Those cities approve those funds, and the next 2 action items are to receive those funds. What this resolution does is sort of a blanket resolution that officially authorizes the CEO to receive funds in the future for future agreements like this. The PSTA board has fiduciary responsibility over the agency. That is clear. And the key way that is done is by the rules and regulations allow for the CEO, me, to expend no more than $100,000 of budgeted funds. And I cannot sign any contract or any purchase that we do that's over $100,000 without getting the PSTA board approval on expenditures. In addition, if I sign any if we purchase anything that is budgeted that is over $50,000, I put that, we have a record of that and we put that in the packet. And we publicly notify the board and everybody that we had a $50,000 or more expenditure. And then on claims, as the finance committee knows well, any claim over $25,000 that we pay has to get board approval. Those are all on expenditures of our funds. What this resolution covers is revenues received, revenues that we're receiving. These are all included in the annual budget approval, like Debbie budgets that we're going to receive funds for these services that we provide to the cities that they pay for. And then we are receiving those funds. As I gave the examples of these, PSC actually has 15, currently we have 15 different agreements with Clearwater, Tarpon Springs, Dunedin for ferry service, for Jolly Trolley services, St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island for their trolley services, and then a couple with St. Petersburg, this transportation disadvantaged one. There's the Central Avenue Trolley interlocal agreement where we receive funds. The Looper in St. Petersburg is shared expenses. Those are services that PSTA provides that are budgeted. And then in exchange, we get a revenue from the cities, those cities for those services. Usually their city council will approve the expenditure and then they would pay us for those services. So what this resolution that that our attorney has brought forward to you today would cover is authorize the CEO to negotiate and approve revenue agreements or revenue agreements with municipalities and then receive those funds as long as they were budgeted. It would only cover interlocal agreements that are revenue generating, inflows. It does not cover interlocal agreements that we sign sometimes with cities when PSTA has an expense. Like we have a interlocal agreement with the city of Clearwater where they are paying Duke Energy to underground the utilities by our new Clearwater Station Transit Center there. And so we're paying them to put the utilities underground. That's an outflow, kind of like a bank. A bank will take your money. If you want to make a deposit at a bank, they pretty much will take it. If you want to make a withdrawal from the bank, you have to have a lot of approvals and paperwork on that. That's what we're talking. This is not for expenses. This is for receiving of funds that are budgeted that the city has already agreed to. We had a good discussion at the executive committee about, we presented this to them. And they asked, well, what has been the change? PSTA has been in existence for 42 years, and we have had some of these agreements have been around for about that long. We have received funds from cities for transit services like trolleys and ferries and things like that. What's changed, and those are long-standing agreements that until recently we have received those funds, we have approved those in the budget and then received those funds. What happened was we have a new attorney. We had one attorney for the first 40 years of PSTA's existence, and he had an opinion that the way these interlocal agreements work is they might be a 10-year agreement or a renewing agreement, and then every year the agreement stipulates how the costs are shared for the service or how the service is supposed to be provided, and then each year we negotiate, we recompute what the cost would be for the service, and then negotiate with the municipality on the next year's amount, and then they approve it and then we receive it. Our former attorney did not think that annual statement of the new number for the next fiscal year constituted an amendment to the original agreement. Our new attorney, Jennifer, she's a great attorney, she has a difference of opinion. She believes that it is considered an amendment to the original agreement, and so therefore, since the PSA board approved the agreement in the first place, the PSA board has to agree to all amendments. So she has recommended that we pass this resolution to just cover that. So then, from now on, when the PSA board approves some kind of agreement with Clearwater or anything, a revenue to be received, then subsequent years that we would just include that in the budget. We would do the negotiations, figure out the cost, and then the city, if the city agreed to it, then we would receive the revenue. I know Chair Fix-Centers, you had a lot of questions at the executive committee. I don't know if I did a better job or a worse job this go
You did a
around.
much better job. Well, you did a great job then, but I'm sorry, Chair.
Please, go ahead.
You did a great job then, but we just had a lot of questions in regards to the amendment and why it came, to pass, and a lot of the questions that we had, you have answered in this presentation. So, and I'm glad that you actually included the executive committee suggested, because what we were concerned, well, I don't know if it was a concern, but what we questioned is giving carte blanche to accept dollars, what would it look like if it was additional, if the dollar amount changed? And especially substantially, and so that's where the executive committee suggested requiring the CEO, now it says suggested, I don't know if it's in here, I need to read it again. Report revenues received from municipalities to the PSTA board in our board package. So as long as we are informed and we know what's going on and we're aware of the dollar amounts, which was our concerns, we were okay with it. And I think it passed unanimously after we've had those revisions and that conversation. It was a long conversation, but it was good. It was good. So Brad, you did a great job. Thank you. You answered all of those questions.
So then to confirm, the current resolution incorporates those suggestions.
Let me go see. I'm not sure. Does it?
It doesn't, it will. It will include the suggestion that we report revenues received in the packet.
So we had enough time to change that. Why hadn't it been changed prior to this presentation?
We had our executive committee last Wednesday, and it did not get into today's packet, but it'll get into next week's packet, I promise.
All right.
Do we have any other questions or comments? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve one or more of the action items.
So I move that we approve action items C, D, and E.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 3C, D, and E.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Then in that case, we'll move into the information items, specifically our ridership and performance agenda item where Mr. Deal, PSTA's planning and data manager, will present information comparing PSTA's core route service versus its coverage route services. Devin, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Planning Committee. My name is Devin Deal, Planning and Data Analyst Manager. At the board workshop last month, we introduced and discussed kind of the core versus coverage concept and how we operate our service and what we prioritize as an agency. With Amendment 3 coming up and the possible vote on that, we wanted to really drill into what our core and what our coverage service looks like, how we offer what we offer, the ridership balance and things like that, so that whenever we are making these decisions following Amendment 3, we have all of the information. So first of all, what is core and what is coverage service? Your core service is your service that is typically your most efficient and your highest ridership and runs most frequently. It serves your major corridors where most people live and where most jobs are. The other type of service is coverage service. This is service that attempts to provide that geographic access so that residents in our county have access to that core service that we offer. If they cannot afford to live in the core, or for some, maybe they bought their house 30 years ago and they don't live in the core, that coverage service provides access to residents who do not live in the core so that they can still use the core. And we also know that on a fixed budget, doing more of one means doing less of the other. We have a fixed number of buses and a fixed amount to operate those buses every year. So to increase our core service, we have to cut coverage service and vice versa. So these also are not binary choices. Most transit agencies operate on a sliding scale of core and coverage service where applicable. If you look at these maps on the right side over here, these are some just really straightforward examples of what a network that fully offered core service versus fully offered coverage service look like in the same area. So on these maps, if you imagine that every single one of these tiny little gray dots is 10 people and 10 jobs, then in this little fictional city, you can see that most of the jobs and most of the people are consolidated along these two main roads. There's still plenty of residents and plenty of jobs outside of that core. But in a core scenario, if you had, in this example, 18 buses, you would put 9 buses on Route A, 9 buses on Route B, and you would run them as frequently as you possibly can. You would serve the most people and the most jobs with the most frequent service that you can offer. If you offered fully covered service, so in a core network, let's say, you're Mrs. Jones and you live down here in this bottom right corner, and you have a doctor's appointment up here at the north end of Route B, you have no way using our transit service to get to the core. You have to find a way, Uber, a friend, a relative, somebody to get you to that core. In the coverage scenario, with the exact same amount of resources, you would spread those 18 buses out into maybe 9 bus routes that serve the whole county with 2 buses on each route. It provides that geographic coverage for riders, but it runs less frequently. It may be a little less useful for you if service is coming once an hour or less and you have to work your schedule around that coverage service, but it does provide access to our tax-paying residents and the people who live here in Pinellas County. For PSTA, we offer about 60% of our service dedicated to the core of our system and 40% operates coverage service. Our fiscal year 26 ridership is on track for about 9.5 million rides. And in our full network over here, within a quarter mile of all of these bus routes, you can access 565,000 jobs. Our core service is blue in these maps and our coverage service is green. I'm going to keep that same color scheme throughout this presentation. When you look at strictly our core service, we are estimating about 8.1 million rides of that 9.5 million to be on our core services. And on our core service alone, you can access about 240,000 jobs. There's some things I want to point out. So while with your core routes, they primarily operate on the core, if there are other really productive areas, one specific example is South St. Petersburg, the 15th Avenue South area. That's been a very historically transit-dependent population that utilize our services frequently. So you may have a core route, Route 9 is the example. It serves Martin Luther King Street all the way from Gateway Mall down into South St. Pete, and then goes through South St. Pete. Through neighborhoods, this area specifically, they typically want to be considered a core. However, that is very productive service that we offer in that area because of the transit dependency of the people who live there. So most of the routes on the core are dedicated to the main corridors. However, they will deviate into areas that are typically more productive that may be served by coverage service otherwise. Whenever you're comparing our whole system over here, we talked about at the workshop the possibility of removing coverage service if Amendment 3 passes. In that scenario, this would be our system of all of our core services. And you can see that we do have some significant gaps for our riders. These areas over here, in between all these major roads, East Seminole, I added another scale bar here just to kind of see the distance between some bus routes for our riders. The coverage service is what goes through a lot of these neighborhoods in Pinellas County, and most of these areas are neighborhoods, single-family housing, and they're typically more affordable for our residents than living on the core. Also, the Pinellas Housing Authority typically can't afford to purchase property in the core to develop their affordable housing. So a lot of the Pinellas Housing Authority properties are served by coverage routes, even though we know that they are heavily transit-dependent populations. So there would be significant gaps in our service going to a fully core network, even though core service is more efficient. When we look at the annual breakdown of our ridership of core versus coverage, it also stands out how much more passengers our core service carries. So our core carries about 85% of our rides and 15% are carried by coverage. Our top 3 ridership core routes is the Sunrunner, Route 4, which travels from PSTA all the way down 4th Street into South St. Pete, and then Route 52, which travels from PSTA along East Bay, West Bay into Clearwater. Our top 3 ridership core routes are also 3 of our 4 bus routes that operate every 15 minutes. So that frequency is really key for high ridership. And then comparing that to our top coverage routes, we see that Route 11 that operates from PSTA down 37th Street all the way to South St. Pete, that carries around 12,000 riders a year. Route 62 that serves Belcher, that operates hourly and carries around 11,000 riders a year. We have Route 61 that operates from Clearwater and it kind of meanders through Dunedin and over to Countryside Mall in North County. That carries around 10,000 riders a month. So our core certainly carries the bulk of our system, but also that's where the bulk of our service is. As I said, these routes all operate every 15 minutes, and these are operating hourly, also typically with shorter spans of our core service. And when you look at how riders are using these systems, we have unlinked and linked passenger trips. Linked trips means that you transferred on your trip. Unlinked means you took one bus. Of our 9.5 million trips that we're projecting in fiscal year 26, about 51% of those riders make a transfer as part of their trip. That comes out to about 4.9 million. Of those 51% of linked trips, nearly a third of them are transferring to or from a coverage route to access the core of our services. And so with this, I just wanted to highlight that while we would lose the coverage ridership, roughly 1.5 million in a budget cut scenario if we cut coverage services, there is also the core rides that we would lose from riders who no longer have access from a coverage route to our core services. So there would be additional ridership lost rather than just the number that the coverage service carries. And so in summary, core service and coverage service have competing interests on a fixed budget. Our balance is about 60% core service and 40% coverage service. Our coverage routes carry 15% of our total ridership. However, about a third of our transfers involve transferring to or from a coverage route. And just again, that loss of coverage ridership, it would be more than just the loss of the rides that are carried by those coverage routes. It's the riders who are transferring to our core to access other jobs and services. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Devin. Do we have any questions or comments?
I see a question.
I can't, I think I'm okay, yeah, I think I'm okay for now, yeah.
Okay.
I'm still learning,
Yeah,
yeah.
same here. Okay,
Great job.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
great
you.
job,
Thank
Devin.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we've covered our information items. Does any committee member have any other business to bring before the committee? Seeing none, I'll mention our next meeting is August 19th at 10:30 a.m. And that means this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.